When Twister hit theaters in 1996, audiences were blown away, literally. The tornadoes felt massive, unpredictable, and terrifyingly real. But what makes this film even more impressive is that it didn't rely only on CGI. Instead, the filmmakers combined practical effects, real-world physics, and cutting-edge visual effects to create one of the most believable storm experiences ever put on screen. And the craziest part? A huge portion of what you see was actually happening for real on set. So without further delay, let's dive into the making of Twister 1996. In the film's intense climax, Bill and Joe find themselves moments away from being pulled into a deadly F5 tornado. With no escape, they rush into a cornfield and strap themselves to metal pipes using belts, bracing for impact as the tornado engulfs them. On screen, it looks like they're being violently lifted into the air, barely surviving the storm's pull. But behind the scenes, this moment was created using a powerful mix of practical rigs and visual effects. The cornfield itself was a real location, giving the environment a natural, grounded look. But the real magic begins when the tornado hits. Actors Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt were mounted onto a specially designed rotating gimbal rig. This mechanical setup allowed the entire environment, and sometimes the actors themselves, to rotate, creating the illusion that gravity was shifting and pulling them upward. Combined with carefully chosen camera angles, it made it appear as if they were being lifted into the sky. The belts you see on screen were mostly visual props. For real safety, the actors were secured with hidden harness systems and strong support rigs, allowing the crew to shake and move them aggressively without any real danger. To simulate the storm, the production used massive wind machines, high-speed fans, and debris rigs. Dust, dirt, and small objects were blasted across the set, creating a chaotic environment that actors had to physically react to. As the chaos intensifies, another jaw-dropping moment hits the screen. Bill and Joe driving their Dodge Ram straight through a collapsing house caught in the tornado. At first glance, it feels like a fully CGI sequence, but the reality is far more grounded and physically demanding. For this scene, the filmmakers constructed a full-scale damaged house set, specially designed to look unstable and partially destroyed. The structure was tilted, broken, and filled with debris to replicate the aftermath of a tornado impact. Instead of relying on green screens, the actors actually drove the vehicle through this tight and hazardous environment, which added a layer of authenticity to their reactions, because they were genuinely navigating through a confined, debris-filled space. Once the practical footage was captured, Industrial Light and Magic enhanced the scene digitally. Elements like flying wood planks, collapsing walls, and airborne debris were added using CGI, but what made it truly convincing was the attention to detail. Each object was animated individually, with its own speed, direction, and motion pattern, ensuring that nothing looked repetitive or artificial. This blend of real driving, physical set destruction, and carefully layered CGI creates a sequence that feels both chaotic and believable, where every moment carries weight and unpredictability. If you closely observe the tornado sequences in Twister, it might seem like everything is digitally created, but in reality, the film relied heavily on practical effects to bring the storm to life. The tornado itself was CGI, but almost everything it does to the environment was created physically on set. To simulate the sheer force of the storm, the filmmakers used incredibly powerful wind sources, including modified jet engines from a Boeing 707, along with massive industrial fans. These machines generate such intense airflow that actors had to physically struggle to maintain their balance, making their performances feel completely genuine. For debris, hidden rigs and moving trucks were used to launch pieces of wood, metal, and dirt into the air around the actors. This created the illusion that the tornado was actively pulling objects from the ground. Instead of relying on CGI for hail, real ice machines were used to shoot chunks of ice at vehicles and surfaces, adding a raw, tactical impact that digital effects often lack. Rain was produced using high-pressure water rigs, turning the ground into a muddy, slippery surface. This made the vehicle movements more unpredictable, especially during chase sequences, where cars would naturally slide and struggle for control. Actors performed many of these scenes under these harsh conditions, which added to the realism. Finally, elements like the sky and storm clouds were enhanced or replaced digitally in post-production, since controlling real weather wasn't possible. The end result is a perfect hybrid, where CGI tornado meets real-world physics, practical destruction, and genuine human reactions. As the film builds toward its chaotic climax, the tornado itself transforms from a distant threat into a fully realized force of nature. And this is where Twister truly revolutionized visual effects. Instead of portraying the tornado like a stylized Hollywood monster, Director Jon de Bont wanted it to feel like a living, breathing natural disaster. To achieve this, the team brought in Industrial Light and Magic, who were tasked with creating something that had never been done at this scale before. What makes this even more fascinating is that no ready-made tools existed at the time to simulate a realistic tornado, so ILM had to build everything from scratch. They developed a custom practical system where millions of tiny digital particles were programmed to move, rotate, and shift density dramatically, creating that iconic swirling funnel cloud that never looks static. This constant motion is what makes the tornado feel alive and unpredictable, just like a real one. One of the biggest challenges was integrating this CGI tornado into live-action shots, especially since the film heavily used handheld and dynamic camera movements. Every single shot had to be manually adjusted, its speed, scale, rotation, and internal debris behavior fine-tuned to match the real footage. And those unforgettable flying objects you see, like cows, trucks, and house fragments, were all digitally created and carefully animated within the tornado system. The famous flying cow moment, for example, was a modified digital model inserted into this chaotic particle environment to make it feel naturally caught in the storm. In the end, what the audience sees is not just CGI, but a seamless fusion of real performances, practical effects, and groundbreaking digital work. This is why the tornado in Twister still feels so raw and believable even today. It wasn't just animated, it was engineered to behave like reality itself. Once the tornado passes, the film shifts into a haunting silence, but the destruction left behind tells its own powerful story, and surprisingly, most of what you see in these aftermath scenes wasn't created on a computer. It was physically built and destroyed in real life. Many of these sequences were filmed in the real town of Wauketa, Oklahoma, where the production team transformed entire locations into disaster zones. Instead of relying purely on CGI, they actually dismantled structures, tore apart buildings, and reassembled debris in a way that mimicked real tornado damage. Walls were partially collapsed, roofs twisted out of shape, and interiors exposed, creating the illusion that these homes had been violently ripped open. But what truly elevates the realism is the scientific approach behind the chaos. The art department studied real tornado aftermath patterns, understanding how heavier objects tend to fall nearby, while lighter materials get carried far away. Using this logic, they manually scattered wood, furniture, clothes, and personal items across the environment to create a believable destruction pattern. To make it feel even more authentic, local residents were used as extras, walking through the wreckage of their own town-like environment. Small details like clothes hanging from trees, broken household items lying in mud, and dust covering every surface added a lived-in destruction feel. Even the lighting and color grading were adjusted in post-production to create a dull, lifeless tone, as if the storm had drained all energy from the surroundings. The result is something incredibly immersive because nothing feels artificial. Every broken wall, every scattered object actually exists on set, making the devastation feel painfully real. In the final moments of chaos, one of the most shocking visuals hits the screen. A massive truck suddenly crashes down right in front of Bill and Joe's vehicle. It's a blink and you miss it moment, but the impact feels incredibly heavy and dangerous. And that's because it wasn't just CGI magic, it was rooted in real physical stunt work. To create this effect, the filmmakers used actual heavy vehicles, which were lifted using cranes and specialized rigging systems. These trucks were then dropped in a controlled manner to simulate the violent force of the tornado. This gave the scene a real sense of weight and physics, something that pure CGI often struggles to replicate convincingly. Once the practical stunt was captured, visual effects were layered on top to enhance the chaos. Additional debris, dust clouds, and motion blur were digitally added to intensify the moment. The camera angles were also carefully designed to emphasize the scale and danger of the falling truck, making it feel like it could crush anything in its path. This combination of real stunt and digital enhancement is what makes the scene so impactful. When the truck hits the ground, it doesn't just look real, it feels real. And that's the genius of Twister. It never relies on just one technique. Instead, it blends practical effects with CGI so seamlessly that the audience is completely pulled into the disaster, believing every second of it. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more insane behind-the-scenes secrets from your favorite movies, then make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next video. And tell me in the comments, which movies BTS should I break down next? Until then, stay curious, stay cinematic, and I'll see you in the next one.